What up, Wizards? Dev, Mtg. We lie magic, and today it's me and a gang full of Twitch chat people as we cover these spoilers. I got super caught up this morning. My morning was actually the late afternoon. I woke up super late. I had some stuff to do. By the time I was ready to record the stupid spoiler video, it was like 9 something at night. So I figured this would be the more expedient way to do it. I got chat behind me, giving me the spirit bomb, lending me their energy and all that, and to call me out when I'm like wrong on stuff like that. So, you know, it's good to have 70 other people here that know when I'm incorrect, which I often am. So we're just going to roll with it tonight. We're going to run through the spoilers in sort of spoiled order, chronological order, is that what you call it? And maybe save a good card or two for the very end so we can, you know, generate some hype for the end of the video and you'll actually like stay and stuff. That's good. But we do have to start on, as usual, some draft stuff. But even in chronological order, we get to do that. We're looking at Jias Firenado. It's a word. And Juniper Order Root Weaver here. I think both of these are decent limited cards, but how much further than that does it go? You know, Order Root Weaver, it's a hard word to say. It's 2 mana, 1 and a white for a 2/2 human druid that kicks for a green. And when it enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, you get a +1/+1 counter on a duder. So this could be a 3 mana 3/3. Right, it's 3 mana for 3 power worth of stats. Whatever. You know, bread and butter thing in limited, but probably literally nowhere else. But I do think this is the kind of like 2 mana creature you want to look at playing in limited, for what that's worth. Firenado is just 5 mana. It's 4 and a red for a sorcery. It deals 5 damage to a creature or a planeswalker. And you scry 1, so like reverse lightning axe, you know, same cost as lightning axe, I think, but instead of only hitting players, it hits everything else. The scry is nice on this, and again, you'll play it in limited because it's a removal spell, but you probably won't play more than 1, right? Because 5 mana at sorcery speed is still a lot. But you want to remove creatures in limited, so play a copy at least. We have a rare next. This is Defiler of Flesh. This is 4 mana, 2 and 2 black for a 4/4 Phyrexian Horror with Menace. And as an additional cost to cast black permanent spells, you can pay 2 life, and the spells cost black less to cast, and you know what I mean. We've seen the Defiler cycle so far this set already. But this time, whenever you cast a black permanent spell, target creature you control gets +1/+1, gains Menace till end of turn. So it costs 1 less to cast than the rest of the Defiler cycle, which I'm interested in the flavor of. You know, was it just easier to get? Was there already a Defiler in black, right? Did they not have to go and list one? I'm not. It is a Phyrexian Horror, so like who knows? But I'm getting way too deep into like the flavor of it here. It costs 1 less than the others. It does have 1 less in terms of the stats, but this last line of text, this whenever you cast a whatever color this permanent is spell, this line of text is probably not as powerful as the others we've seen, right? The others we've seen include draw a card and like put a +1/+1 counter on all of your dudes. Like those are unbelievable. Those are really good. The white one is, you know, make a guy. That's pretty good. This, I don't think it's that great. I really don't. I don't know where this fits in really either. Some sort of, you know, black mid-range deck. It could be the 4-drop in a black aggro deck, but I think there's just better things to play than this. You know, you got like Enrica Dominaria and stuff like that. So I just don't know where this goes, what it does. I'm not too sure. It already has Menace, so you kind of feel a little bit bad targeting itself with its ability, but you can do that. So I think this is one of the weaker in the cycle, even though it cost 1 less than the other cards in the cycle. So. But we'll move on to Rona, Sheldred's Faithful. This is 4 mana, 1 blue and 2 black for a 3/4 legendary human wizard. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, each opponent loses 1 life. Okay. Whenever you may cast Rona from your graveyard by discarding 2 cards, in addition to paying its other cost. This isn't terrible. Am I wrong to say that? I mean, it's kind of got like, I was going to say half of Liliana's Magecraft ability. But really it's that Golgari 2-drops Magecraft ability is what it is. But it meets in the middle between their 2 casting costs. You know, Golgari 2-drop, 6-drop Planeswalker, 4-drop guy. It blends them very, very well. I've always liked this particular like Magecraft ability. I think it's really fun to play around with. And this one actually can come back from your graveyard. It's at a pretty big cost, but hopefully you're discarding flashback instants and sorceries, right? You just discard like whatever, Faithful Mending or the Dimir one. I always forget what it's called. The Dimir one that draws cards from your opponent's library. You know, you discard those, and then you can play those, deal damage to your opponent. You know, it's not too bad. Note that this doesn't gain you life the way like the 2-drop or Liliana does, and that's kind of lame. But still, I've always liked this text box. But more than anything, this looks like a fun little commander for Brawl or something like that. I don't think this sees too much standard play, all things considered. Even with this ability to recur, normally I would be fooled by this, but discarding 2 cards is kind of a lot. Siphon Insight is the Demir thing I'm thinking of. Yes. Yeah, probably never worth recurring. That's the thing, is you can have 2 cards in your hand, or you can have a 3/4. Most of the time, I'd rather have the 2 cards in my hand unless they are both lands, and I already have like 8. So I don't know. I think that the recursion makes it interesting, but probably not quite good enough. So we'll move on. Cool card, though. Very cool card. I think better than the last time we saw Rona, right? But Kyrion Beastcaller is 2 mana, 1 and a green for a 2/2 Dryad Warrior. Whenever you cast a creature spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Beastcaller. When it dies, distribute X +1/+1 counters among any number of target creatures you control, where X is the number of counters. +1/+1 counters, that is, on Kyrion Beastcaller. Have to be very careful with this, because you don't just distribute its counters among other creatures you control, because that means that if it were to get like a flying counter, lifelink counter, you distribute those. That's not what this card says. It's just the +1/+1 counters. So it's worded very specifically. This looks kind of strong a little, but I'm not convinced that it is. It's a grizzly bear. That's why, hilariously, there's a grizzly bears in the background, because on turn 2, it's a grizzly bear. Just 2 mana, 2/2, doesn't do too much. Dies 2, play with fire and stuff like that. Any bits and stuff like that, I will call you out for a little when we're done with the spoilers. But I do appreciate the bits. Thank you, Oregon. Both times. You're awesome. But Beastcaller, if you can start turn 3 with this still in play, then it can become a 4/4 pretty easily, whether you play 2 guys or you play like a token generator that makes 2 tokens or something like that, you know, or a guy that also comes with a token. There's like a million ways to do this. So making this a 4/4 on 2 is fairly easy. And then if it dies, your other creatures get like reasonably big from that point on. Like, even if, here's my take. Let's say you play this on 2, untap on 3, and it's still in play. If you play 1 guy, then you have a 2 mana 3/3. And then when you're 2 mana, like when you're, it's a werewolf pack leader, right? When your werewolf pack leader dies, you get to put 1 of its power on another guy, which is actually like pretty good. Like, even if you only play like 1 dude, like that's pretty good. So I think this is probably strong enough to see some play as just basically in like green mid-range and aggro decks, obviously. We'll have to see how many of those there are, and we'll have to see if it's truly good enough in aggro. Because right now it looks like there's going to be a green-red aggro deck. I don't know if it's going to be werewolves or if it's just going to be green-red strong cards, which is probably more likely what it's going to be. That deck wants to play Thundering Raiju, it wants to play Bloodthirsty Adversary, so it's more likely just going to be green-red good stuff, aggro, you know? And on turn 2, that deck has access to, you know, a 2 mana 2/2 haste, Bloodthirsty Adversary. But how many other really good plays does it have? So it might want this. It's the kind of thing that scales throughout the game, and you do want a card or 2 in aggro that does that. And then it's protected from dying in a way, because, you know, when it dies, you put its counters on stuff. It's good with a Thundering Raiju. I want to throw that out there, because it's modified, you know. So it's probably decent enough in those Gruul aggro decks, but I would assume, really, that like Gruul aggro on the draw probably doesn't really want this in their hand. It's like super slow for them on the draw. So I'm not 100% sure, but the fact that this can get to a 3/3 and a 4/4 like really easily, and then like it doesn't all the way die, like its power stays on the table a little bit after it dies, like, oh, that's really, really good. So I think this is a strong enough card to see a decent amount of play, especially in the early days of the format while we feel things out. I think this will be a really popular 2-drop. So it enables Kami's Flare. Yeah, it does. Yeah, all the modified stuff this is good with, and considering it's Dece with Thundering Raiju, right? It's no replacement for like Luminarch Aspirant, but it feels Luminarch Aspirant-y, you know? It's a 2 mana dude. You're going to play on 2. It's going to get bigger as the game goes on. It can't scale your other creatures, but it scales itself. This might be like the only dude that you have that survives a meat hook, which could be great, you know. There are good and bad things about this being a cast trigger rather than an ETB trigger. See, I screwed things up. You have to cast 2 creatures. I don't even know if you guys caught me on that, but yeah, maybe you did. But you have to cast 2 creatures. This is a cast trigger. So I'm sure people have already commented and got me on that on the YouTube video. But yeah, this is a cast trigger. So you can't just cast like token makers and get token counters on this. But it should still be easy enough to cast creatures on turn 3 and turn 4 and make this, like a 5/5. That's pretty imposing. And again, growing it above Meat Hook, I think, is going to be pretty important. So, yeah, it stinks. It stinks of aspirant, It's like a fixed aspirant. Like, it gets bigger, but it can't spread the love until it dies. And then it can spread the love a little bit. So, but yeah, this might be our replacement for aspirant, but it's green. So let's move on. I think this is one of the better cards of the day. I really do. But I'm still, if you can't tell, like, apprehensive about it. But Joda's Codex is next. This is 5 mana for an artifact with domain. 5 tap, draw a card, but it costs 1 less to activate for each basic land type among lands you control. So you may have noticed that this could be free. This could be, if you have all 5 basic lands, just tap, draw a card, which is good, but it still costs 5 mana to play. This feels like it wants to be a JM Day Tome or some other callback like that, which is cool. And in 5-color Commander decks, this might have a chance, 5-color Brawl decks. But I think that 5 mana is kind of a lot for Standard, especially when in those 5-color decks, there's better stuff at the 5-drop slot. So I don't think this is destined for any real play, but I like the callback. I like the art. I really do. And I like the effort. I really like the idea of it, but it's 5 mana to cast the stinking thing. Does kind of work with new Tezzeret. Like, if you don't have all of the basic land types yet, then the new Tezzeret's passive. I say new Tezzeret. Streets of Capenna Tezzeret makes it so that this only costs 2 to activate, probably, if you have at least one of the basic land types. So, again, a little better, but 5 mana is too much to get started, But Phyrexian Espionage is next. This reminds me of a card that would have been in, like, the OG, like the original Invasion. Like, it's just so simple and perfect, and it's probably not that great in Standard, but probably decent limited. This is 3 mana, 2 and a blue for a sorcery with kicker, 1 and a black. Draw 2 cards. If the spell was kicked, each opponent discards a card. So, your strictly better divination of the set, sorcery speed, 3 mana, draw 2 cards. That's divination. They've been making that a little bit better lately, but I think this is much better, I don't know how often in limited you're going to wait the 2 extra turns or more even, depending, to pull the trigger on this. But I think if you do, it's not half bad, The thing with divination is that in limited, you often cast it on turn 3 because that format is slightly slower. You can tap out on 3 and take the hit from your opponent's combat step, and it's kind of okay. Divination doesn't see play in Standard because that is not as much of a reality. You're looking for your 4th land in limited, right? You're looking for your bombs in limited, so you need to churn through your deck as quickly as possible. Again, Standard doesn't work that way, but limited does. The thing about that, though, is if you want to cast this for 5 mana in limited, that's going to take your whole turn 5, and that is a completely different thing. But if your opponent's down to just a card or 2, they might have to discard one of their better cards or a removal spell or something. So I could see this being halfway decent there in a format where you're going to play divination anyway. And if this comes off the top of your library in the exact right time in your, like, drafty control deck, then it could be really good. So, divination is a time-honored, limited, basically playable most of the time in very specific limited piles. So I don't think this will be any different. Moving on to a mythic. This is Sarah Paragon. 4 mana, 2 and 2 white for a 3/4 angel with flying. During each of your turns, you may play a land from your graveyard or cast a permanent spell with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard. If you do, it gains when this permanent is put into a graveyard from the battlefield. Exile it, and you gain 2 life. Card looks good. This actually reminds me a bit of the black creatures that we've gotten like this recently, Nightmare Shepherd. I think Gisela, if that's her name, does something kind of sort of similar to this. There was the Snow Cleric Zombie guy for 4 mana that kind of did something like this when you remove your opponent's creatures. So, Lisa, it kind of sideways looks like this, All of these things that basically give you either recursion or a way to save your creatures in the late game. These cards look very similar to me, but this is better than a card like Nightmare Shepherd in a lot of ways, because, you know, with Nightmare Shepherd, I believe that happened when the creature died. It would trigger, but this, the creature can already be in the graveyard, right? So long as you untap with Sarah Paragon, or you have like 7 mana, which is not unheard of, you can play this and like get something, you know, that died 4 turns ago. And I think that's actually really cool. You can also play like the family lands out of your graveyard, which is pretty cool. Channel lands, like if you channeled a Iganjo earlier in the game, you can play it out of your graveyard when you cast this on 5. So, I don't know. I think this is actually pretty good, but is it good enough? Are there better white 4-drops? I'm not sure. I've already seen a couple of white 4-drops I have my eye on. A couple of white 5-drops I have my eye on, but I think this is probably, in some cases, going to be a little better than the Lightning Helix Angel that we saw, the Mardu, like, Lightning Helix Angel, you know? And that guy, I'm really excited about that lady. So, you know, I want to be excited about this. Most of the time, it's not going to do anything on the turn that you play it. But this is one of those things that, like, if you untap with it in play, it becomes great. Like, really, really great. You know, casting a thing mana value 3 or less from your yard is kind of great. You know, again, I've brought this card up before this spoiler season already, but like Restoration Specialist, play that out of your yard and, you know, reanimate something else, you know. All that's good. And then another good thing about this is that, like, let's say I do get a Restoration Specialist out of my yard, you know. If it dies, not only do I get to attack with the thing that it got out of the graveyard, but I also gain 2. Like, Restoration Specialist has lifelink. So if it, like, dies on blocks, I could gain potentially 5 life. You know? Like, that's really good. But just the gaining 2 life thing is pretty good, period. And if you do get one of those family lands out of your graveyard with it, then suddenly you gain 3 life off of that, and you get a land, obviously. So, I don't know. Paragon looks kind of okay. You know, it doesn't look too bad to me. You probably have to untap with this on the table or draw it very late in order for it to be any good at all. But this is real value. Like, this is real and kind of annoying value, too. So, last thing about this, too. Let's say if you untap with it on the battlefield, that probably means your opponent doesn't have removal, right? Probably. So, they didn't have removal for your 3/4 flyer. You untap and you play something out of your graveyard. What are the chances they have removal for that now? You know, this comes down late in the game, like after a sweeper. Like, let's say opponent hooks you on turn 6. They like hook for 4, you know, and then you untap, slap a land down. You got like 6 mana, you know. You untap, you play this. You have 2 mana to play a 2-drop out of your yard, you know. Like, that's not an unheard of situation. So I don't know, dude. Paragon could be okay. Saragon, yeah. It's right there. I don't know why I didn't see that one, but yeah, probably a really good card. We'll move on to, this is a good card too, I think. Haughty Jin. This is 3 mana. 1, he is hot too. This is his, oh my god, oh no, he's hot. SpongeBob memes. This is 3 mana, 1 and 2 blue. For a star 4 Jin with flying, and its power is equal to the number of instants and sorcery cards in your yard, and instants and sorceries you cast cost 1 less to cast. So this is an Enigma Drake that is also, what is it, a Goblin Electromancer? Just kind of like they made him kiss. They made a baby, and it's this boy, and he is, again, he ended up hot. Their baby would be hot, and here we are. This is a good looking card to me, man. This is a good-looking card. This also reminds me of, like, Tempest Jin. That was big in mono blue from a couple of years back, you know. But that cared about the number of islands you had in play. This is the number of instants and sorceries, and, like, that should be pretty good. The problem I have with this, guys, is that, like, the blue X, you know, whether it's blue-white, blue-red, whatever. The blue X, like, tempo deck in Standard that might want to play this card, it might be, like, a little too expensive for, to be honest. Like, that deck plays Delver of Secrets, sometimes Illuminator Virtuoso, always Storm Chaser Drake, right? So that deck can only afford to play like 16 creatures and no more, and all of those creatures are 1 or 2 mana. So, like, is this actually too expensive for the currently existing blue tempo decks? It might be, man, but it might also be the knockout blow. It might. It might, And you can always make it bigger. One thing I don't like, by the way, about the blue-white tempo deck, which is the best version of it because you get to play Virtuoso. One thing I kind of don't like is that that deck plays Homestead Courage. And it's just kind of awkward because you play your Homestead Courage and it goes into your graveyard, gives your Haughty Djinn +1, right? And then you play your Homestead Courage out of your graveyard and your Haughty Djinn gets -1. Even if you play Homestead Courage from your graveyard onto your Haughty Djinn, it's basically neutral. He gets an extra toughness, And that feels it just doesn't feel bad. I mean, it feels kind of bad, So I don't know about some interactions this card has. It might be a little too expensive. It doesn't really work the way I want it to with Homestead Courage, which is a card you have to play in that deck. So I don't know. But Enigma Drake has always been kind of playable. Like a little playable. It's always been like a budget player's dream, but this thing's rare, so. But just putting both these lines of text, like Enigma Drake and Goblin Electromancer on the same card it's pretty exciting. It really, really is. I want to play with the card. But yeah, younger, sexier Tempest Djinn. Yeah, it's the hair. The hair is nice. It's good. I couldn't pull it off, but I like it. But we'll move on to, is this the best card of the day? Let's move past it for a second. We'll come back to that. There's 2 cards I want to come back to that I know of. But we'll move on to Runic Shot. This is just a white mana for a sorcery. Has kicker blue. Destroy target tapped creature. If it was kicked, scry 2. Pretty good, Sorcery speed probably just murders this. It probably makes it a not good card. You will play this in limited. I think you'll play every copy of this that you get in limited where it's really good, But not only Strand of Hair, not only is it sorcery speed, right? So, and you have to kind of take a shot from the creature, right, before you can kill it. But also, there's kind of a lot of vigilant creatures in this upcoming standard. There's a lot of important vigilant dudes that are important, because they get around the Wandering Emperor. But they would get around this too, and then it'd just kind of be awkward, When your opponent has Topiary Stomper or Wandering Emperor tokens, they have vigilance. 3 cards spoiled already that might be important to have vigilance. So I don't know. But 1 mana destroy target creature is kind of ridiculous. When you just got an extra mana laying around, you get to scry 2. That's also very good. So I wouldn't be surprised if a blue-white control deck packed one of these, precisely one of these. I think this is a decent card. Cleaving Skyrider. I like this thing, guys. I like this more than I should. This is 3 mana, 2 and a white for a 2/2 human warrior with flash. It has kicker, 2 and a white. It also has flying. What a weird way to arrange the keywords on this card. When Skyrider enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, it deals X damage to any target, where X is the number of attacking creatures. So you can play this on your opponent's turn, and X will be equal to the number of their attacking creatures, right? So they swing in before your blocks, play this guy, 6 mana, bolt one of their dudes because they attack with 3 guys, or even if it's just shock one of their dudes, that's probably good enough a lot of the time too. And then this guy can block too, ambush as well. That's good, man. 6 mana is a lot, and I'm really only looking at this in limited, where it is a strictly better Windrake that has a removal spell stapled to it. So I think this might be one of the premier uncommons in the set for limited. I really do. The problem with this one, obviously, is the tension, just like all these kicker cards, do I save this until I have 6 mana, use it as a removal spell, or do I just go ahead and play this on 3? Do I ambush one of my opponent's guys with it, or do I go attacking with it as quickly as possible? A lot of decisions with this, and I like that. I like these flexible, cards that have all this tension. And this does, 6 mana is not that much. In sealed, you'll probably get there, not guaranteed in draft. Really, it's not. Especially with how aggressive this format is shaping up. But when this comes off the top of your library late in the game in sealed, it will always do something. I promise you, it will always do something. So Skyrider actually looks pretty sick to me, but I don't think he's really any standard play at all. So let's move on to a card that this card, Battlewing Mystic. This is 2 mana. 1 and a blue for a 2/1 bird wizard with kicker red, and it has flying. When Mystic enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, discard your hand and draw 2 cards. What? Oh my god. So a 2 mana 2/1 flyer, obviously not the best stat line. You're not going to see play just because of that. But obviously not the worst stat line either. Let me just point that out. But Discard your hand, draw 2 cards. Like, okay, Reanimator decks. Let me just get that out of the way. I know I bring those up a lot, but Reanimator decks, just toss your whole hand in the bin if you want to. But I think more, importantly here, is what if you just don't have any cards in your hand? What if this is like the last thing that you play? That's also good. That's really, really... Then it's just like Mole Drifter, but it costs you less, right? Like, I don't know, guys. I think this is, like, very sick. Like, I think this might even be playable in, like, not standard, like, for farther back formats. Yeah, Chatter brings up Madness decks. Yeah, Madness. That's, kind of silly, yeah. 3 mana. 3 mana, 2/1 flying, draw 2 cards. There are a lot of situations where it's going to be that, especially off the top of your library. This is just like an unbelievable top deck. Like, you get a body on the battlefield that can block like almost anything, so long as it doesn't have Flample, or it's not like Suspicious Stowaway. You know what I mean? But it can block just about anything late game and draw you 2 cards. This will catch you right back up. I just think that this is like one of the best cards of the day, and I might be wrong. I could be very wrong on this. Like, we could be judging, because I see people in chat too saying like, "Oh, this is nuts." And I don't know, man, like, there are bad things. There are awkward. It's awkward, right? Because, like, on turn 3, you don't want to play this most of the time, You probably don't, but on turn 5 or something, maybe you play this, but then it's just like, okay, 2/1 flyer, whatever. Maybe in your tempo deck, if you play this on... You have to discard your hand, But, maybe you play this with 1 card left in your hand. It's a land or something. You discard that. You have 5 mana, right? You discard that. You have 2 mana left after you play this. And you draw into a Make Disappear or some other like 2 mana counter spell. Like, that would be good. Or you draw into an Infernal Grasp or like something, like some removal spell. Lightning Strike. So, I don't know. Could be really, really good. Especially combined with like scry effects. Like, is it... Okay, well, at the end of my opponent's last turn, I used Fading Hope on one of their guys. And then I scried. Well, I can't do that because I drew that card. But you know what I mean? Like, let's say main phase I use Fading Hope on one of my opponent's guys. And I know there's a good card on top, right? So at that point, I'll know that it's worth, like, discarding the last card in my hand to draw that card, Like, there's, little edge cases. But even without the edge cases, this card looks pretty strong, dude. So, yeeks. Like, I think this might be a very, very good card. But we'll move on to Herloon Battle Hymn. This is 3 mana, 2 and a red for an instant with kicker white. Battle Hymn deals 4 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If the spell was kicked, you gain 4 life. So if it was kicked, you get a Boros Charm, sort of, kind of. It's one that can target creatures and whatnot. So that's probably playable. I will say that these often 3 mana. If they're 2 mana, they're sorcery speed, like Thundering Rebuke, right? But these, like, 3 mana deal 4 to 5 damage to a target red spells at instant speed. Often see at least sideboard play, and in this case, it could see real play because of the life gain mode. So, forgive me if I'm wrong, and I have 88 people who will tell me if I am or not. But let's say this gets stuck under an Arcane Bombardment. When I play it for free, I can kick it, right? Pretty sure I can. Pretty sure that's how playing free spells with kicker has always worked. Is that you can play that you can play the spell without paying its mana cost. But to pay any kicker cost, you just pay whatever mana they cost. But you do have the ability to do that. Yes. Okay, that's what I thought. So under an Arcane Bombardment, this looks kind of slick, sort of. But even without that concession, and like Jeskai control decks and whatnot, this looks pretty decent. So I wouldn't be surprised if this saw a little bit of play. I wouldn't. We will move past this next card because that's the other card that I want to save until the end. And we'll look at Jias Might. Gia? Yes, if it has an E, it's Gia. If it has an I, it's Gaia. I learned that the hard way because everyone hates when I try to pronounce these words. Anyway, Jias Might is 1 green mana for an instant with Domain. Target creature gets +1/+1 till end of turn for each basic land type among lands you control. Is this kind of nuts? Like, obviously if you have a Triome in play, it's a giant growth. So, like, is this playable in Jund or something? I'm not sure. Probably not. I think just straight up giant growth that needs some sort of, fuel is not good. Like, giant growth that needs setup is probably not good. But 1 green mana for +5/+5 is probably decent. You know what I mean? So, maybe. Maybe. I kind of highly doubt it. I do see this being pretty decent in, like, those, if they can facilitate them. Like these 3-color aggro decks in limited, or maybe if you're just a lunatic and you want to put together that 4 or 5-color aggro deck in limited, I wouldn't suggest it, but this would probably be decent. Even like a 4-color or a 5-color mid-range deck, just your typical, like, I have creatures in my deck, some removal kind of pile. Maybe this will jump in and surprise somebody every now and again, and you'll get in with like a 2/2 for like 7 damage. It could happen, but I wouldn't bet my life on it. You're really spinning the wheel there. So I don't know how much I like this card, but I really want to. The allure, 27 years of playing Magic, and the allure of, for 1 green mana +5/+5 still calls to me. I still want to play 3-card Monty. I still want to play this shell game, Magic Christmas Land. It's never going to happen. Hey, kid, all you got to do is roll a 7 and step right up. I still want to play this game. What is wrong with me? The card's probably not very good. So, it's no Berserk. Yosha Declares War is next. This is 2 mana, 1 and a red. It has read ahead. Ramen, bars. On Chapter 1, you create a 0/2 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying named Ornithopter. You know what? They just create an Ornithopter token. On Chapter 2, tap any number of untapped artifacts you control. When you do, Yosha Declares War deals that much damage to target creature or planeswalker. On Chapter 3, up to 1 target artifact you control becomes a creature with base power and toughness 4/4 till end of turn. So I imagine that this is probably going to be played straight, and you'll just skip straight ahead to Chapter 2. What happens in Chapter 2? I don't care about the Ornithopter chapter, but maybe you do. Maybe an Ornithopter's fine to have. It's cool to have one, right? But either way, I like starting this on removal and then getting a 4/4 next turn. It doesn't stick around. It says till end of turn, which is like super lame. They really chickened out on that. I would like if this was just a perma 4/4. Well, then maybe the card would be good, Kill that guy and get a 4/4 on the next turn for 2 mana seems pretty decent. But, for 2 mana, get some board presence. It's just an Ornithopter. But, like, 2 mana, get a guy, kill a guy, make a dude a 4/4. Probably your Ornithopter. This is the running with scissors deck all in one card, isn't it? That's what they're aiming for. It's the running with scissors deck. But it's one card. Thing is, I'm not even sure this is good in running with scissors. So it's probably not that good altogether, but I do like that second chapter. This is one of those that, like, it really has to prove itself. I'm not sure this sees much play. It wants you to play a bunch of artifacts, but it's an enchantment. At least it makes an artifact, but you're going to be really tempted to read ahead a lot of the time. But it does kind of seem okay. It kind of does. Let's see. We've seen all these cards. Yes, we have. All right, so let's move on to Djinn of the Fountain. We'll get through this one quickly. This is 6 mana, 4 and 2 blue for a 4/4 Djinn with flying. That means it's playable in draft. It's an air elemental, so it's playable in draft. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, choose one. Djinn gets +1/+1 till end of turn, or exile Djinn of the Fountain, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step, or scry 1. So you're going to call me nuts for this one. But you know what this reminds me of? They've done this. They've done this on a few cards in the set. I've pointed it out already. What if we made this iconic card uncommon? What if we made Frost Titan uncommon? We've already seen that guy, right? What if we made Morphling uncommon? What if we made Aetherling uncommon? That's what this is, right? Am I nuts? Because you're not pumping mana into it like you would with Lings and stuff, but you cast instants and sorceries and it does Aetherling stuff. But it's bad in standard. However, this is probably very, very good in limited. I would assume that if an air elemental is playable in sealed, that this is the queen of the air elementals, So I'm playing this. If it ends up in my sealed pool, I'm playing the hell out of this. I think this is actually pretty sweet. C plus limited card. I think it's a B minus. Solid. Solid. I think so. Now, we've, again, in limited only. No standard play. Although, don't be tricked. Temporary lockdown we've already seen. Drag to the bottom is another sweeper, though. This is 2 and 2 black for a sorcery with domain. Each creature gets -X till end of turn, where X is 1 plus the number of basic land types among lands you control. A fixed meat hook massacre it is. Really, this is kind of like a build your own languish. Missing some text dev. Each creature gets -X till end of turn, where X is 1 plus the number of basic land types. Okay, so it can get you 6. It can get you a whole 6. Okay, so it can be a little faster than meat hook. I guess I did miss that text, but like, I still don't think that that makes it as good or even like the level of meat hook. And I hope I'm not just being like obstinate here, but okay, so 1 plus. So if I have 3 basic land, if I have a triome, that's a languish. If I have a triome, it's a languish. That's better. That's better. But I still think meat hook's the better card. 9 times out of 10, I think you'll just play meat hook. But again, you know, we're losing blood on the snow, and decks might want to play multiple sweepers. So I don't want to say it's not going to see play while meat hook's in the format, but I do think that's the ultimate obstacle, right? So, it's a solid card. You know, if I had to rate it, it would be like a 7.5. Like, that's a good rating. It's a playable card. But, I think when I'll put it this way, it could see some play while Hook's in the format, but then when Hook rotates, depending on what else we get, right? But when Hook rotates, I think this starts seeing the real play. But we'll move on to Ivy, the Gleeful Spell Thief here. This is 2 mana, a green and a blue for a 2/1 legendary fairy rogue with flying. Whenever a player casts a spell that targets only a single creature other than Ivy, you may copy that spell. The copy targets Ivy. So this looks like, and yes, you can copy aura spells. This looks like it's meant for a very specific kind of player. And I am not that player. I don't think. I mean, I like aura spells, or I like aura decks and stuff like that. You know, I'm an enchantress player. So maybe it's decent there. Obviously, in the enchantments deck, this could go okay. We lose all the runes. You know, we lose like all the really good auras that you would play in that deck. So I don't know. It could go into the blue-green, you know, tempo deck, like blue-green Delver or something like that, where it would probably be pretty good. But I'm still not convinced. You know, 2 mana, 2/1 flyer. We've already discussed that's not the best stats, but it's not bad stats either. Like, it's worth it. Its stats don't drag it down, right? I'll put it that way. And the moment you target your Storm Chaser Drake with something, you get to draw a card because you targeted Storm Chaser Drake, and you get to target Ivy with whatever you targeted Storm Chaser Drake with, which is like actually kind of crazy. So this could be fantastic. Like, it really could. But what I'm interested in is making like a commander deck with this card. It seems like a commander-y kind of card. Because like when it really gets going, I bet it is the nuts. I bet it is the nuts when this card like gets going. But I'm not sure it's going to have the chance to do that. But it is really cheap to cast. It is extremely cheap to cast. And if you have one other dude, it does require a lot. You know, you have to have more creatures out. You have to have things in your hand that can target your guys. But early in the game, that's really not that much to ask. You know, the first 4 turns of like a Blue X tempo deck, it's going to have those things. So this could just be a disgusting card. But again, only in certain pockets of the game. But that's true of most of these like creatures that tempo decks like to play. Let's move on to Danitha. Man, I feel bad because was it Fats McClure or Chris Perrin? It was one of you. It may have been on Cascan. It was one of you who said that they hoped for a really good Danitha in this set. Well, let's talk about what we got. This is Danitha, Benalia's Hope. 5 mana, 4 and a white for a 4/4 legendary human knight with first strike, vigilance, and lifelink. When Danitha enters the battlefield, you may put an aura or equipment card from your hand or graveyard onto the battlefield attached to Danitha. This is 5 mana. Yeah, text good, numbers bad. That is a great way to say, that's a great way to sum it up here. That text is phenomenal. It does require that you have a good aura or equipment in your graveyard or in your hand. It sucks that you can't just immediately equip it with something that's already in play. You know, that'd be fine. Might be a bit nuts, but it would make the card better for sure. The chances that you still have an equipment in your hand when you play this on 5 are relatively low. But the chances that you have an aura in your graveyard, I think, are relatively high. Probably, honestly, the idea that you have an aura in your graveyard, probably the highest percentage use case on this card. If I had to guess, because you probably tried to stick an aura to something earlier in the game and your opponent killed it. So you play Danitha on 5, get your aura back, everybody feels good. There are weird things about this card. Like, one thing that bugs me is, let's say I have an aura that grants lifelink. Well, it's useless. The same thing's true with First Strike and Vigilance. I mean, I guess, like, if they gave a power toughness boost, they would give that to Danitha. But, like, if I had, like, an aura that grants Vigilance and First Strike in my yard, I'd be super mad. That's good on every creature but Danitha. I know that's going to come up. But either way, like, it's cool. You know, it's the reason it's costed so high is because there are very expensive enchantments throughout Magic's history, very expensive auras and stuff that you could put onto this. Basically, play it like a reanimator spell. You reanimate an aura, put it onto this, but it's not like those cards haven't existed in the past and they haven't been broken or anything. I mean, this is 5 mana. Your opponent can just blow out whatever you're trying to do with like an Infernal Grasp and you feel bad. So I don't know how much play this ultimately ends up seeing. I feel like it has to be rare for draft. Like in Limited, this is really good. Just the body is good. Like in Limited, the body's great. 5 mana, 4/4, First Strike, Vigilance, Lifelink. It's going to win you some games, but in Standard, I'm not sure how great that is for 5 mana. But again, you know, the function I'm most interested in with Danny here is to quote-unquote reanimate a really expensive equipment or aura from my graveyard and just throw it onto Danitha, you know? I do wish that I could go ahead and attach an equipment that was already on the field to her, but still, there are probably some like fun stream jank setups with this, but you know, I am in a lot of ways even less excited about this than I was about the 3 mana Danitha in Dominaria, a card that I really, really liked. But at 3 mana, that was too expensive. At 3 mana, that card was too expensive. So what are we doing at 5 mana? You know? I guess the idea is that if you do get a 6 mana aura out of your graveyard, you kind of got 11 mana value for 5 mana. Like, sure. You know? But I got worries. I will say, though, this alternate art over here, cursor, sick. Like, that's awesome. We'll move on to King Darien. What did we decide here? 48th? The 48th? Yeah. Anyway, King Dardar's 3 mana, 1 in Selesnya colors for a 2/3 legendary human soldier. Other creatures you control get +1/+1. 3 green, white. Put a +1/+1 counter on King Darien and create a 1/1 white soldier creature token. Sacrifice King Darien. Creature tokens you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. It's pretty good. I shouldn't have to tell you. It's an anthem effect for everything. You know, it's an anthem effect for other creatures, period. This does die to like lightning strike and stuff, but what? I think this is still probably worth it. He reminds me a bit, probably just because he's an old man with an anthem effect, and you know. But he reminds me of the old general from a couple of sets ago. The 3 mana general in Orzhov that gave all humans +1/+1. He reminds me a little bit of that guy, but this dude can't remove stuff. He can make creatures of his own, but the activated ability is extremely expensive. 5 mana is that's going to take your entire turn on most turns throughout the game, but you can do it at instant speed. Making a guy is fine, and putting a counter on him is fine too. You know, he gets much bigger as the game goes on. But once the opponent does pull the trigger on that sweeper, then suddenly all your tokens get to survive, unless it's Meat Hook Massacre, in which case this is useless. So there's that, but doesn't play very well against Hook. But, you know, makes 2/2s, effectively 2/2s, makes all your other dudes big at just 3 mana. That's not the worst rate in the world, right? And is wrath protection, and can even jump in front of one guy. You know, this also reminds me a bit of Linvala, who's going to be rotating. She could sacrifice to give all your dudes hexproof and indestructible. It wasn't relegated to tokens, right? And that card didn't see much play, but that card also didn't have an activated ability and an anthem effect, you know, so I don't know. I like King Darien or King Darien, we'll call him, as like an offshoot of cards like the ones I've just brought up, but I still am not 100% sure that this sees all of the standard play. Will it see some play? Yeah, I think so. But when it comes to all of the play, no. And that's how I like my Magic cards. I don't like my Magic cards to be too powerful. I don't think this is, but I do think this is powerful enough. This is pushed enough to get around from time to time. Meat Hook ruins so many new cards. Yeah, it does. And that, you know, that new Black Sweeper we just looked at kind of ruins this too. But there need to be foils. They're not shiny cards. There need to be counters, basically, to everything. And, you know, if your opponent's playing Depopulate or other traditional sweepers, this is a counter to them. Sweepers are a counter. Yeah, sweepers are a counter to creatures. Creatures like this are a counter to sweepers. Sweepers like the Meat Hook Masker are a counter to creatures like this. So, like, there's a lot of interplay, and you're supposed to like that. But we'll move on to Silver Scrutiny next. This is 2 blue index for a sorcery. You may cast Silver Scrutiny as though it had flash. If X is 3 or less, draw X cards. For a while here, the top comment on Mythic Spoiler for this card, or the only comment for a while, was like, I feel like this should have been an uncommon. Like, you feel like Better Mind Spring should have been an uncommon? Like, you feel like Better Brain Geyser should have been an uncommon. Brain Geyser. It's a better Brain Geyser. You can't target your opponent with it, but, like, it's for all intents and purposes, this is a better version of a legendary card in Magic's history. So, yeah, I actually kind of like this. I think the irony, the tragedy, really, of Silver Scrutiny is that once you do get to that 4 or 5 mana threshold, like, I'm going to draw 5 cards, you have to tap out on your turn for it. You know, it's sorcery speed. So that sucks a little bit. However, 5 mana, instant speed, draw 3, or 4 mana, instant speed, draw 2, that's kind of fine. We've actually already seen in multiple sets that a 4 mana instant speed, draw 2 is just kind of playable. It's just kind of playable, right? You know, I don't think this is better than Memory Deluge, but I do think that the ability to draw an extra card, if you're not too pressed to find cards, you know, if I wait a turn, play a land, well, now EOT I get to draw 3 instead of 2. I think that scalability is actually really, really good. And then if you draw this late in the game, look, we all play Magic. We're you know, let's be realistic. How many games have we been in just this season on stream? Not counting all the games you guys have played without me. All the games I've played without you. I'm sorry, I have to do that sometimes. But, like, how many times have either we or an opponent or both of us been on 12 mana? You know what I mean? Like, you could rip this off the top of your library and just X equals 4 and still have, like, 4, 5, 6 mana left, depending on where you are in the game. So, like, it's not the worst thing in the world in those spots either. I love the scalability on this. I love the instant speed conceit on up to 3 cards. That's pretty good. So I'm not putting this past, like, seeing some play. I really don't think that it could be bad. It's a weird way to English. Syntax is not my strong suit, but again, I think the scalability on this makes it kind of better than I think it looks to a lot of people. I do. Yeah, that's the thing. I knew somebody's going to bring this card up. Graven Lore. Graven Lore didn't see too, well, that's not true. Graven Lore saw a little tiny bit of play, but never in very popular, very dominant decks. Graven Lore had a snow conceit to it, which was kind of a big deal. It was. This does not have that, and this is scalable. I really think people underestimate scalability. People made that mistake on Hydroid Krasis. People have made that mistake on cards countless time at this point. And I think the scalability, the ability to be anywhere on your curve, the ability to come off the top of your library and just be a game ender, basically, I think this card actually has a lot going for it. I really do. Because, yeah, it's Graven Lore, but it's not. It's Chemister's Insight, but it's not. You know? Like, it can be Chemister's Insight or Graven Lore. right? But it can't be as good as either one of them. For that, though, it could be either one. It could even be a boat. But the card looks good to me. It really does. But now we move on to... Well, hold on. I feel like MTG Previews is missing a card here. Yep, they are. They're missing an important card. Maybe I should just reload. Oh, wow. There's like 3 new cards. Wow. Well, let's look at these on Mythic Spoiler, which has a dark background, which will be good for us mole people that can't see. Like, bright white backgrounds just offend our eyes. I'm one of you. Let's do this in reverse order, because I already knew Sprouting Goblin existed. I'm trying to cover the card up with my hand like you can't see it. You obviously can. But I know Sprouting Goblin is solid, and I wanted to talk about this card. But Automatic Librarian and Elvish Hydromancer I have never read. So get ready for an experience. Automatic Librarian is 3 mana for a 3/2 artifact construct, and when it enters the battlefield, you scry 2. Okay. Normal card. Love the art. Enforcing absolute quiet with extreme prejudice since 3285 AR. Ooh, like a year reference. That's actually really interesting to nerdy people like me. When was that? Anyway, Elvish Hydromancer. 3 mana, 2 and a red for a 3/2 elf wizard with kicker, 3 and a blue. Got kicker, 7 mana. When Elvish Hydromancer enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, create a token that's a copy of target creature you control? Huh. Well, I'm already paying 7 mana for my Titan of Industry, aren't I? So why not just pay 7 mana for my Titan of Industry, and then the next turn pay 7 mana for this? It's not worth it. It's not worth the slot in your deck. It's just not. It just isn't. But let's move on to Sprouting Goblin here. This card looks interesting to me. This is 2 mana, 1 and a red for a 2/2 Goblin Druid with kicker, green. When Sprouting Goblin enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, search your library for a land card with a basic land type, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. You can also pay red, tap, sack a land, draw a card. This card's good, right? This card's pretty good. It's just a grizzly bear that can also sack lands and draw a card, which is just kind of like fine. You know, card's fine. In Sealed, I could see this being specifically good because you can sacrifice lands and it's probably okay. But in Standard, I think that this card could see some play in the mid-range decks. Every now and again, this is what this card is. Every now and again, we see the same, it tends to be green card that costs 2 or 3 mana, 2 and a green, for a 2/2, that when it ETBs, you go search a basic land. Right? And those cards used to see some tenuous play in like mid-range value engine-based kind of decks. The last time one was printed, I think they reprinted Civic Pathfinder, if that's the name of the card. It might be Civic Wayfinder. It's Civic Wayfinder. The last time they reprinted that, it saw 1 of play in like 1 or 2 mid-range decks throughout its entire like 2-year tenure in Standard. So Civic Wayfinders aren't good anymore, right? So what they've done is they've just made a really good version of that, is what they've done. You can pay 2 mana for a 2/2, and that 2/2 also has an activated ability that draws you cards. That's just good, right? Or you can activate Civic Path or Civic Wayfinder mode and pay 3 mana for this and go get a Triome or Shock, which is, you don't have to get a basic land with this. It's a card with a basic land type. So you go get a Triome with this guy. This basically guarantees your 4th land drop. It fixes your colors and all that. This reminds me of a ton of stuff. Like, you have to squint really hard and look, like, turn your head completely sideways to see some of the things I see in this. But I see, like, not just Civic Wayfinder, but, like, Sakura Tribe Elder in this card. I see Solemn Simulacrum in this card a little bit. It puts the card into your hand, right? So there's that. But, you know... Do you see what I'm saying by Solemn Simulacrum? Gets lands, draws cards, right? And in this case, it's really flexible. So this is actually, in some ways, one of my favorite cards with kicker from like this entire set. I think the value on this is really good. Really good. It gets great in the late game. It's great with stuff like Soul of Windgrace. We saw that card earlier in the set. Obviously, Soul of Windgrace can get stuff back, lands back from your graveyard. This sacrifices lands to draw cards. Pretty good. Good with Slogurk. I believe Slogurk can get lands back from your graveyard as well. So like Temur Slogurk, sack lands, get them back. All that sounds good. So there's some fun little combos with this, but even if you don't have the combos out, just sack a land, draw a card. If you're desperate, like I need a 2-mana removal spell and I have 6 mana. I drew a land for this turn. Let's sacrifice a land and draw into another 2-mana. Try to draw a 2-mana removal spell. I think that you'll do that like all the time. If you're desperate, you're digging, right? This might save your butt a good bit. And it kind of gets a land to sacrifice, if that's what you want it to do. But this card just kind of does a lot. It does a lot. It's so much value. And I don't know if it's going to see a ton of play, but I want it to. I want it to. So, I kind of love this guy. Kind of really, really love this guy. But let's move on to the final 2 cards of the day. The ones that I skipped over earlier. Because I think they're very, very good. First, here's Stenn, Paranoid Partisan. Yes, are you down with SPP? Yeah, you know me. This is 2 mana, a blue and a white for a 2/2 legendary human wizard. And when it enters the battlefield, you choose a card type other than creature or land. Spells you cast of the chosen type cost 1 less to cast. You can pay 1 a white and a blue and exile Stenn. Return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So this is a Goblin Electromancer and a Jukai Naturalist and a Mechanaut, whatever it is that makes artifacts less to cast or whatever. It's just all of those guys. It's every single one of those guys in one card. And you can change it. You can change the thing, right? Like, it's not straight up Goblin Electromancer. You choose instants or sorceries. But who cares? Who cares? You know what I'm trying to say, everybody. But one way or the other. You can change it. You know, you can blink him and then later reset him to something else. Planeswalker? You know, you can play this on 2 and it ramps you into a 4-mana Planeswalker on the next turn, which is probably fine too. You can play this on 5 mana. There's a little tension here. You can play this on 5 mana and have the mana up to immediately protect it if you have to. It's good news. But at that point in the game, its cost reduction is not as valuable in most cases. But it could be. Could be. I think you'd be surprised by how important the cost reduction is on like turn 7, right? Like, oh, if not for Stenn, I couldn't play this guy and this guy, you know? So, I don't know. It happens with Jukai Naturalists like all the time, you know? Just keep that in mind. But either way, this is a Jukai Naturalist, Goblin Electromancer, whatever, that can both reset itself and protect itself. You gotta reset yourself before... Don't do it. But stop it, Dev. But this looks good. You have to be kind of just the silliest not to think this looks okay. Like, I know it dies to play with fire and like all the other removal, and you know it does. And I'll be the first person to point that out 9 times out of 10. People get upset with how often I point that out. But counterpoint, when it's a 2-mana guy that does this much, it's kind of okay if it dies to Infernal Grasp. A lot of the time I have a problem with like 5 and 6 mana dudes that die to Infernal Grasp because you're spending 6 mana or whatever and it dies to a 2-mana thing. This is at least at parity with Infernal Grasp, and it's not that much more expensive if it does die to like a play with fire. You're not losing that much mana value against your opponents when they kill it with that kind of stuff. It's just a 2-mana thing to get on the table. And just like a Naturalist, if you untap with this on the table, you can do some like real work, some serious damage with this. So I think that this is just a very good card. I don't think it's broken or anything, but I do think it's one of the better cards we've seen, if not today, then maybe even in the set. I think the card's that good. But let's look next at Anointed Peacekeeper. This is 4 or 3 mana. This is actually just a card that already exists. Sort of. This is 3 mana, 2 and a white for a 3/3 human cleric with vigilance. It enters the battlefield. You look at an opponent's hand, and then you choose any card name. Starting to look familiar? Spells your opponent's cast with the chosen name cost 2 more to cast. Activated abilities of sources with the chosen name cost 2 more to activate, unless they're mana abilities. don't like that this exists as Elite Spellbinder rotates out of the format. Here's something I wish WotC would understand. Okay? When you print super annoying cards and they're in standard for 2 years of our life, we would really like it when they rotate if they would actually rotate. Like, don't. I know it's not exactly the same thing. I know it's not. But just stop this. Just stop doing this. Like, you've done it with so many cards recently. Like, Skyclave Apparition was in the format. Oh, it's going to rotate. And here comes Brutal Catharsis. What are you doing? Like, stop. Can we go a year without a Fiend Hunter in the format? And now at this point, can we go a year without an Elite Spellbinder in the format? I agree. I was excited. 3 people are all like, yes, exactly. Standard might not even exist if they stop doing that. Yeah, tongue in cheek, but you're kind of right. Like, I understand that there are going to be cards that just exist in standard. Like, some version of them exists. There's always going to be a sweeper. There's always going to be a counterspell. There's always going to be multiple versions of those cards. You know, there's always going to be like a 2-mana 3/3 of some kind, right? Like, these are cards that kind of have to exist, and you do different takes. But this guy does not have to exist in standard. He doesn't have to. I promise. He doesn't have to exist. Could be better than Spellbinder even, because he doesn't die as easily to like a Meathook Massacre. I will say, when this dies, you then get to cast the thing. You know, like, the annoying thing about Spellbinder, the most annoying thing in a lot of cases, was that you kill their Spellbinder and you still have to pay the tax on your card. This doesn't do that. And I like that. I do like that. So, like, one of the more annoying parts about that card is gone. It doesn't fly. Spellbinder was really good at getting in for combat damage. This doesn't fly, but it does have Vigilance, which is pseudo-relevant in a Wandering Emperor environment. The stats are decent for the mana cost, and obviously the ability is really good. All the way down to activated abilities of sources with the chosen name. So you're making them pay more for their Planeswalkers, and you're making them pay mana to use their Planeswalkers' activated abilities. This is obviously true of like creatures and enchantments and stuff, artifacts, right? But I think it's really going to matter when it comes to walkers specifically. So this guy looks obviously solid, looks very good, looks like it will almost certainly see play. Probably the best card of the day. He taxes multiple cards at a time. Elite Spellbinder only taxed 1 card. This taxes cards with the chosen name, which is better in a lot of ways. So it's a reworked Spellbinder that isn't exactly the same, but it's obviously a take on Spellbinder. And I was just very excited to not have to see that. And maybe I'm grouching a bit much, but that was one of the cards that I was very annoyed by in this standard, and I was happy to see go. And now it's basically still here, but potentially worse. Potentially, when I say worse, I mean like more annoying. So, yeah, I mean, it's just tax. I mean, white can tax things. I'm okay with white taxing things. I just don't want to see like the same exact card design, you know, just tweaked ever so slightly. You know, tax is fine. Taxing is fine. But this particular tax, you know, 3 mana, 3-powered guy, look at their hand, choose a card, cost 2 more. Like, it's, come on. You just, come on. Honestly, this is to me just the best card of the day in terms of standard play, which is what I tend to cover. And I don't really think that's too arguable. I mean, there are some cards that could be very powerful, but just in terms of like, this guy has all the things I look at when I evaluate cards for standard. You know, he's easy to cast, only 1 colored pip in the mana cost. He's got decent stats and a keyword ability for the mana cost. He does something when he enters the battlefield, right? So he makes it harder for your opponent to play their cards. He just, all of the boxes that this will see standard play, this ticks. So I think it's the best card of the day. But, I mean, there's cards on screen. Like, Battlewing Mystic is actually disgusting. This card is sick. So, you know, don't count it out. That's all I'm going to say. Drew Blue, thanks for the 13 months, a baker's dozen year worth of months. I appreciate you, dude. But that is, to the best of my knowledge, let me reload Mythic Spoiler one more good time. To the best of my knowledge, all of the spoilers for the evening. Yep. But I believe that there are, 23 or 27 different content creators that are putting out spoilers tomorrow. And I'm going to try to definitely, I don't have quite as much to do tomorrow evening, so I should be able to get back, hit it hard, and actually get like a spoiler video from the couch out both tomorrow and Thursday. But again, don't forget, Friday, we're coming back to end spoiler season here on the stream. Talk about the best cards from the last dump. And, have our birthday stream. We already had the stream's birthday stream. It's my birthday on Saturday. So we're doing the birthday stream on Friday. We might play a little Bone Razor Minion or Cult of the Lamb. Just whatever I feel like playing. We might play like a Super Nintendo fishing game if I feel like it. We might play WWF No Mercy. Whatever I feel like playing, we'll play on Friday. Because it's my birthday. But tonight, had a great time. I think that there are a number of playable cards from today. And just like I saw somebody say this earlier, you used your first time ever chatting on it to say this. I see in my comments section, people are more or less underwhelmed by some of the cards in this set, or just the set at large. I think the set looks good. But I'm judging by what I like to see in a set. I like Kelly Logs. Thanks for the tier 1 sub. 25 months. Chew. Wow. God. It's over 2 years. Dude. Kelly, thanks. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. This set looks really solid. I got the uncommon rarity especially. This set looks incredibly solid. There are uncommons that could be rares. And there are uncommons that are really simple designs, but I still think they're going to be like incredibly playable cards. At the uncommon slot, this set looks super strong. Even stronger than, we pointed this out with Capenna and Kamigawa, right? But in this set, the common and uncommons look even stronger. So I really like what they're doing. The nostalgia's on point. I'm seeing characters I want to see. They're pulling at the heartstrings, Weatherlight completed and all that stuff. Like, there's a lot of hype stuff in this set in terms of the flavor, things I've been waiting 20 years to see as a Magic player. And I think that, especially at the rarities they need to bring it at, they're bringing the proper power levels. So I like this set. I do. I don't think that every rare is like a massive banger, but those tend to be the sets that become problems in standard. So I'm kind of glad that that's not what's happening, honestly. So it's a fine set to me. I think it's a fine set. I'm keen to draft this. Yeah, me. Honestly, I've had a player draft token on Arena for like 6 months that I haven't used. I might use it on this set. I might. Because honestly, the limited environment looks good and fast. It looks like a pretty fast set. But that's all I got for now. I got to go ahead and get this on YouTube. So I don't have too much more time here. I'm just going to download it and throw it directly onto the old youtube.com. If you're here from YouTube, this wasn't so bad, right? Enjoy. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you're watching from over there. And consider coming and joining us here on Twitch every now and again. It's not so bad. It's a lot of fun, in fact. But thanks for everyone joining on streams tonight. Man, we still have over 100 people. Jeez Louise, mac and cheese. It's crazy. Hey, what's missing is ridiculous cards, and that's a good thing. And Dr. Ness said it more succinctly, more poetically than I could. So thanks, man. But anyway, that's all I got for this one. And I'll see you again really, really soon. I'll see you on the couch tomorrow and Thursday, and then back here on Twitch on Friday night for the birthday stream. But thanks for coming out, everybody. Look ma no hands. Thanks for your follow just now. You'll be immortalized in YouTube history for that, along with Kelly Logs and Drew Blue. And I love you all. And I will catch you cats later. I am Deb from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. And remember that I will always be waiting for you in our next adventure together. Spread love and be kind. Good night, everyone. Good night. Take it easy, guys. I'll see you later. Bye.